All right. You two feel confident? Yeah, I feel like I understand it. All right, so we'll just take them in order as they've been placed in front of us. The one here on top. Okay, let's see. My top got moved. All right. This was Bradley S. Dunn, challenged by Ronald T. Grooms. Allegation is that the candidate is not a voter who cast a Republican ballot at the most recent primary elections in Indiana in which the voter voted, and who is a Republican in good standing. So, Mr. Grooms, you're present here today, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Steve.
With this information, how were you able to determine the voter's primary voting status? Do you recall?
I was informed from the Republican election board member
Okay.
that there was a possibility of challenges that might be presented that might require my signature. And at that time, I was able to procure the names of those persons who the party leadership asked me to challenge.
Mm-hmm.
At which time I reviewed the code and reviewed the summary of the persons who had been not in compliance, if you will. The Republican Party in the state of Indiana has a rule, not a law, a rule of the Republican Party. Then there's another law that deals with codes dealing with the right to vote, but right to be a candidate. Instead of the Republican rule is that you must have, when you voted in the previous two elections prior to the election which you want to be a candidate, you must have voted in a Republican primary to be a Republican in good standing. If that rule, either one of those rules on that code that you see, if either one is true, the candidate can be challenged by the Republican Party. In this case, the Republican County Chairman. In this case, happens to be me. So I'm challenging on that basis of the Republican Party rule. The courts have ruled, and it's been upheld, that the rule adopted by the Republican Party and entered into court proceedings is valid, it can be enforced, and it is a law that the courts must uphold.
The statute says that must have voted in the two prior primaries or sought the permission of the county chairman. To your knowledge, did Mr. Dunn approach you about running for the position? What is he declared as a candidate of here? County Council at large. Okay. Were you approached, or any other members of the party committee, central committee, approached by Mr. Dunn regarding candidacy for this office?
I was given the names of the persons who I was asked to sign an affidavit to challenge them. I received some communications from a friend of Mr. Dunn's suggesting that I reconsider my position and allow him to be placed on the ballot as a candidate for Clark County Council at large. I happened to get either a text or a phone call from Mr. Dunn asking if I would talk to him about my position, and I explained to him that it was a rule of the Republican Party. I had sworn to uphold that rule, and it was in my position that it was my duty, my office as county chairman of the Republican Party, it was my obligation duty to uphold that law. And in that situation, I signed an affidavit or signed a document that challenged his candidacy. It just so happens that Mr. Dunn and I had a cup of coffee this morning to discuss his position. And I made it clear to Mr. Dunn that this is strictly a rule that I, as a Republican Party chairman, had sworn that I would uphold that rule, and that's what I'm doing.
Mr. Dunn, is that,
That's me.
that's you? Do you have anything that you wish to say regarding,
May I see the code?
I'm sorry, real quick, before I stop?
It's okay.
Before I let you, do either of you guys have any questions for Mr. Grooms? Based on anything that he said or any of the questions that I asked?
No, I think I had a couple, but I think they've already been fully answered, so.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't want to
It's
interrupt you,
okay.
Mr. Dunn, but, for fairness, these two guys should be asking questions, not just me.
May I approach?
Sure, go ahead.
May I see what's in your code book?
Yeah, this is,
In which section?
we're working through this section right here.
Where, let's see. And where's it at for the two most primaries?
Yes,
At least 4.
In the left column, in the middle down.
All right, help me out. The two most recent primary elections in Indiana in which the candidate voted. So, not the two most recent primaries, the two most recent primaries in which I voted, the candidate, correct? Right.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
what it
let's
says.
clarify that. Not the two most recent primaries, the two most recent primaries in which the candidates voted,
okay.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Because I'm just getting mixed signals when I'm talking to people and in the meetings. I want to make sure that when I'm talking to you guys, that's the premise that we're going on, right?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to hand you guys, I know you guys had this probably already, and this is just to explain a little bit where my mind frame was when I got this filing. If I can give you the right file here. This is my first time, give me a second here.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. So, when I got the call from voter registration, I was a little shocked that they're telling me I've only voted in one primary, ever. I've been voting since I was 18 years old.
How about that?
Now, they came around in high school when I was 18 years old, asking everybody to sign up for voter registration. Come on, guys, vote, register, do your thing. And which I did do, registered to vote, 624 Denton Avenue when I was 18 years old. I voted in the first general election in 2008, and I just want to give you guys a copy of that, just so you can see what I'm looking at. Now, I get a little confused here, and when I got the call, I thought, well, that's no big deal. That's kind of a dumb challenge for me, because I've always voted here and there. Surely got to be two primaries. So when I looked at it, I'm seeing 2020 is the only Republican ballot I've ever done in a primary. That doesn't make any sense to me. So when I pull my voter registration, I see the cancellations back in 2016, 2016. These are where I'm canceling my address and re-registering to vote to move, to be sure that I'm in the correct place for the primaries in 2016. I thought for sure, and I know I bugged the crap out of her when I was calling, because I was trying to figure this out because it's frantic, because I knew I voted in 2016. Although I can't prove that to you guys, this is my whole spiel. I voted in the primary in 2016, although I don't know how to prove this to you. I voted for Ted Cruz against Donald Trump because I wasn't Donald Trump yet. Wasn't there yet. I don't know how to prove this. I've tried a million ways. I bugged the living crap out of her. She searched my name a million different ways at 624 Denton Avenue. I don't know where this has gone, but my voting record, even for, because I can tell you when I was 18, I voted for Barack Obama the first time, Change for Hope, whatever. And then I went from there. Yes, as a Democrat, sorry, Republican now. But I voted in 2016 primary. Ted Cruz. It's in my brain. I know it's there. I just can't find it. I have that second primary. I know I have it. I don't have all the primaries. Last year's primary, all the Republicans in my district were running unopposed. So I didn't turn out. So that's the lack of that one. Last year's general election, you don't see it. I was working the polls in Charlestown. No, that's not an excuse. I have 3 kids. The 4th is on the way. She's about to be due probably today. So I probably shouldn't be here, but here I But I know I have that one that saves me, I just can't give it to you. The only other explanation I actually came up with today is, there, if you can probably search a guy in Scottsburg that has my name that's got me actually in trouble a few times for having my identity. That's the only other excuse I can find. I have voted. I've always voted. I may not have hit every primary, but I have hit 2 Republican primaries. I know I have. Because I was thinking, well, that's a dumb challenge. I know I've hit 2 because I know how I voted in that year. Because I was telling myself I was not ready for Donald Trump yet. I'm a Republican, but I wasn't there yet. And then, of course, fall in line, voted for Donald Trump in the general, and then so on and so on. And it sticks out in my mind because I wasn't ready and I wasn't there yet. So that's the best explanation I can give you guys as to why I should stay on this ballot. And and I've talked to other people that have worked in the clerk's office. I've even had other people tell me they have seen this before. They've seen these instances happen to other people's voting records. So it's not just me. So I don't know how else to explain this. I don't know what else to ask. I had a great conversation with Mr. Grooms. He's a great man. I understand what he did. He had to do it for the party and I respect it. So whatever happens, happens. But again, this is the only explanation I have. But I'm a Republican. I've always been a Republican. Past the first election, I voted Democrat. But I don't know how else to find this. I tried every which way. I understand the records only go back 22 months now. I was thinking, how else can I dig in this?
They do not. Sorry.
They do not?
They go back pretty far. I
Yeah,
have
these
looked
dates
at-
go back to 2016 and 2018, so.
Yeah,
I
but I'm
looked at my,
telling you,
I
I
looked at
voted
my
since
folders that goes
2008.
back to the 80s. So
So
there's,
I don't know how to find all of them. I don't know where they are. I know I've always voted.
as for yours, I know that when you came in, we looked up your old address,
Mhm.
where you lived with your parents. And we were unable to find you any history there. Like I
Mhm.
said, a lot of times we attempt to make sure that if you move locations, you are connected to your old voting history where you were previously registered.
Found my brothers and sisters. Found
Yeah.
everyone. And they don't even live in that house anymore.
That's the Denton Avenue address you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've registered to vote in 2 houses.
Yeah.
Was there any period of time where you were, in college away from the county where you
No, I've
registered
never
to vote
moved
in
out
another
of this
county?
county.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it. And she has gone above and beyond to help me.
And she being Haley
Yes.
Hall, or?
She's been amazing. Because I was kind of frantic on the phone call the second time I called her
Right.
back when I realized what this was. Because I knew it to be untrue. This is untrue. I voted and know at least 2016 primary, Republican primary. I know it's hard what I'm asking you to do because it's not there. But if there is a sworn testimony on behalf of me or oath, that would suffice in place of that. But I know that's not probably a thing, but I know that I did vote in a Republican primary that meets the 2. And again, 2023 primary, all unopposed. What was the reason for turning out? I know you're supposed to, but all my candidates were unopposed. 2023 general election, I was working the polls. Again, I have multiple children. I can't go vote early sometimes. But I am a Republican, always have been. So I ask for your consideration to keep me on the ballot.
Any questions for Mr. Dunn? You said you'd always been in Clark County, had moved, or?
I've never moved out of this
And you
county.
said that these canceled registrations were for you to change addresses?
I was
in
trying to
county?
change the address to make sure I was
Just
in the
up-
right place to vote, because if you look at
Right.
the date, that's before the primary.
Yeah.
To
No, I
make
can
sure
see
that
that.
I was in the right place. Because this was important to me. Because again, it was, here comes Trump, and I was like, I don't know about this yet, but I'm Republican. But I wanted to make sure, so like I said, that's why it sticks out in my brain. I have the memory of circling the dot, of doing what I was doing. It's there. I was there, I did it, and I voted. I just can't find it.
Do you have any response to his follow-up, Mr. Grooms, anything? You said you guys had coffee this morning.
We had a
discussed it.
discussion regarding this morning. Again, I'll go back to my original statement. To me, the rule is very clear. 2 previous primaries that a candidate was voted in must be Republican. must show that to be a friend of the Republican Party. And I'm simply reacting and doing my job as the chairman to bring this to the attention of the election board, that this candidate does not meet the definition of a Republican in good standing with the Republican Party because of the issue regarding his voting in two most recent primary elections.
But
Where he could have voted.
When he, yes,
But again, if I may, if I go back to at no fault of my own, I did vote. And I meet the requirements under the Indiana code. If we consider the fact that that's the best I can prove, but I can tell you I voted. I voted.
Unfortunately, any other?
I think it's, I mean,
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can only go by what SVRS tells us, and it's updated, and I can identify who the county workers were that entered these: Derek Harvey, Karen Henderson, Susan Pop, Angela Coronet, Helen Keaton, Jim Crowder. So, I mean, we're able to determine who the people were that worked in this office that kept that information up to date. And I can't tell you why it only goes back to 2016 if you voted in 08 and 12 and those other years. But this is all I've got from SVRS, and that is all managed and maintained too by the Secretary of State. I feel like the rule is a bright line rule that you've got to have you got to vote in two primaries, and you have to vote for the party in two primaries. If one of them was in 2016 and then another one wasn't until 2022, I think that would have been sufficient to prove you were a Republican. But in this one, our information's only telling us that you had the 16 primary ballot. I hate to personally, I would say let the people choose, but primaries are set up because the parties have made an agreement not to pick people in a back room. And so you have a public primary, and that's the purpose. The parties are sponsoring and running the primaries. But there still has to be rules, and they're going to be applied to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party equally. And I mean, I wish it was different, and I hope you do vote, and I hope that you get access and get to do what you choose again in the future.
So my next question is going to be, because I can see what this is leaning into. I know we're going to get to Rust eventually. So I know that doesn't apply to everyone that's been challenged, but my candidacy does. So and again, I can see where we're leaning here. So my next question would be to ask, because I know you have till the 68th day before the primary to actually make your decision. Would you be willing to wait until that 68th day to see if Indiana would make their decision?
I would say two things. If there's going to be evidence that would show up to us, we can always reopen it 68 days before the primary. I don't know how, but if there was evidence that you had voted in some other primary and Mr. Grooms was able to
If they
review it.
side with Rust, I wouldn't need to.
Well, but Rust is also, that's a federal office, and there are 14th
trial
Amendment
courts-
challenges there. I understand, but there are some other legal issues that are wrapped up in that. And I'm not gonna necessarily sit here as a judge trying to determine the law that's gonna apply. I think it's very clear that you've been a resident of the county, you're a regular voter, and that you've got good intentions, but as the county election board, I've got to apply the law as they've written it to me.
But I think
And-
Rust applies across the board. A trial court ruled it unconstitutional, and
the
then it was
Supreme-
taken up to the Indiana Supreme Court.
Right, who
which
stayed
right
it.
now, it's under decision.
right, well, it's been stayed, which means
It
it's
is
not in
stayed.
effect, which means it's not in effect.
I understand
What's the
that.
trial
They
court
have-
rule?
And they've asked for relief in that stay. And again, as talking to the attorneys for Rust, they're expecting a decision by Thursday, at least for relief on the stay or a decision. So all I'm asking is, you've got till the 68th day mark anyway. What's the difference between you making a decision at 11:30 on Thursday and today?
Well, I didn't file the complaint.
Yeah.
Mr. Grooms filed a complaint. So he's here today to have his complaint addressed.
Mm-hmm.
If we TUA or take under advisement that decision, do I foresee him withdrawing his complaint? Mr. Grooms, would you?
No.
No. So again, I mean, I'm in a situation where I don't really have many opportunities or a choice. And I'm not, this board isn't really gonna be making new law by creating a challenge
Think it
down
would be
the
new
line.
law.
There's gonna be other issues that get decided with Russ that are gonna be completely different than yours. So I'm not gonna necessarily say a blanket decision by the Indiana State Supreme Court's gonna apply in all cases. I don't think the Indiana State Supreme Court would ever write a decision like that. So if they do come down with a decision on Rust, I bet you it will be very closely tailored to what they wanna say specifically about Rust candidacy, and they'll leave the rest to county election boards, county courts, Indiana Election Division to figure out how elections get run. It's typically not a good idea to have judges determining who's a candidate and who's not.
Okay?
As I said, personally, I would just let the people pick it, but I don't write these rules. We can only apply what we're given. Is there anything that you two need to add?
Well, the only other thing to note is we have to have this done.
The 29th, right? The 29th is our deadline to.
Yes, 29th at noon.
at noon.
So candidate challenges have to be
68 days
adjudicated by the
before primary.
29th
Yeah.
at noon.
So you, technically, it's up to you that 68 days before noon.
Well, and I've asked for leeway, it's not my complaint. At the same time, I don't, unless there's other evidence that we're gonna be confronted with that says you for certain did vote, I can't really go against the rule,
I got you.
or the board can't. Any other motions or any other thoughts to add from Mr. Dunn, Mr. Grooms?
I believe so.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Move that candidate filing challenge filed by Ronald T. Grooms as to Bradley S. Dunn carried.
So deny the candidacy at this time?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And again, Mr. Dunn, I don't want you to walk away. I want you to vote in this primary and come back and pick another office and stay active.
But I do have another question, even though I'm kicked off now. So argument's over. But even though they're striking down that exact subsection, you're telling me that this board couldn't make a decision. I find that ridiculous.
I haven't
When they
read,
wipe away that
until
entire
there's a
thing.
decision, there's nothing that says they're going to overturn the entire law of the state of Indiana.
It wouldn't be the
that says
entire
that.
law.
Well,
It's that
but as
subsection
regards
that
to
they're
that,
having a problem with.
I don't see that happening yet.
I understand that,
I'm
but
not
what I was
gonna-
asking for
I'm not
was
gonna try to predict the
until
future.
Thursday that day. It'd be your day to decide, because
If
it's
our
not his
deadline is at
challenge, it
12
was your
o'clock
time.
on Wednesday, the 29th, then even if they come down with a decision at 12:01 on the 29th,
Then
I
I was
can't do
out.
anything about it.
Exactly, but
So-
if it was 11:30 and they came in down with a decision wiping away that code, that subsection, it would have wiped away the need for two, not one, and they would have been gone.
That's not
That's
to
what I'm
say
saying.
that his challenge is not valid.
It
That's
wouldn't
not
be
to
valid.
say that his challenge still couldn't be validly made after the Supreme Court decision. And, I mean, again, I can't predict what they're gonna decide.
Oh, I know that, but what I'm saying is, you guys are the board, you have a deadline to decide his challenge. He doesn't decide the date of when it's decided, you do.
Well, the other
Correct.
piece of it, this is a regularly scheduled meeting. Let's say if it came down at 12, let's say it came down at 11:58, we would not legally be able to hold a meeting.
Trust me, I'd take a loss. I'm not saying I wouldn't take a loss.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
but let's say it came down.
in all fairness, it would be,
We would,
us as a board has the leeway to say, I have this many days to make a decision so the ballots can be printed efficiently, and this is what I'll do, because the
there's
Indiana
still an
Supreme Court
open
is
law
hearing this.
requirement, open meeting law requirement that we would have to publish and make it known that this was going to be heard so that the public had the right to be present. And I just don't see that happening before Wednesday.
we would have to, it would have to happen tomorrow for us to even.
Yeah, to even have remotely enough time. And we, again, it's,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Just
All
a
right.
question of law, since two of your lawyers, would,
Thank you.
assuming that the
Thank
Supreme
you.
Court.
Good luck, guys.
Strike that
Picture of-
section, that particular
picture of your
subsection of the
ballot
law
next
down,
time.
Have you ever had?
wouldn't that render the challenge moot because the challenge is based on that subsection?
Again,
Just say-
I understand what the question is, if you're arguing mootness about the challenge, until the Indiana election division and the law changes, I don't see how that challenge is gonna disappear. I don't expect anything for the Supreme Court on this
I'm not saying it's
decision.
gonna happen, I'm just
Right.
asking for my benefit as an
I
armchair
promise you,
attorney who
I
never
would not
gets
make
it
a
out of
decision
hand.
without consulting with the attorneys at the Indiana election division. I'm also here to make sure that I don't involve our county in useless litigation.
I completely understand.
And that if we made a decision and then the county has to defend our decision in a lengthy court proceeding that's gonna cost taxpayers money, then I'm not gonna be doing my job that way either. So, I mean, that's part of the reason why the rule exists
I
in the first
understand the
place.
decision you made, Mr. Steele, I'm not disagreeing with that, I'm just asking as a point of law, for my benefit, if the
Not-
Supreme Court explicitly struck down that subsection,
Not having read
would
it
it cause mootness?
and not being able to
Okay,
predict
that's
the
all I wanna know.
future, I would wait until we actually have
So I
something.
understand it, I agree with you that they almost certainly will decide the Russ case super narrowly, and it won't apply to anybody else, and they'll just say, let the legislature fix it in the next year or so. But I'm saying that the possibility would exist of mootness, I just wanna make sure I understand the law better, since I intend to be a legislator.
No, I don't disagree with being inquisitive about it and trying to, I mean, truthfully, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have wanted to run for, federal offices in the state of Indiana, and they didn't have Mr. Russ money to make a challenge. So we'll see who gets to be a senator and who doesn't. All right, moving on to our next, set of complaints. This was, the next two are challenges to candidate Caitlyn Bessett, who is present here, for convention delegate at large and precinct committeeman at large.
Negative. Committeemen aren't at large, committeemen's one precinct.
I'm sorry, I said at large. It's for the 14th precinct.
Thank you.
I have attachments.
Very well.
And Indiana Code 38218 mentions putting a written objection in place, so I did that. I didn't know if you all would require it or not.
Oh, very
Mr. Grooms.
thorough. Typically, as long as the parties are present, we're usually pretty understanding of how paperwork gets brought to us. It's Mr. Grooms that has filed this complaint. Mr. Grooms, you have challenged Ms. Blessett for these two offices on the Republican primary ballot. First one stating for the delegate at large position, is not a voter who I'm sorry, it's the handwriting. Basically, Republican ballot at the most recent primary elections in Indiana in which the voter voted, and who is a Republican in good standing. Similar statement on the precinct committee challenge. Do you have information? How did you determine that Ms. Blessett was not a voter in good standing, or a Republican in good standing? I'm sorry.
The information that was provided to me from former vice chairman of the Republican Party and substantiated by the current member of the Republican member of the election board led me to believe that the information that they had gathered was correct. And according to the rules of the Republican Party, I had the right to challenge candidacy for those two offices. Yeah, I might just interject. These rules are here for a reason, and there's always going to be situations that arise that there may be some question about the intent and whether or not the record keeping was accurate and whether or not the documentation was properly done. But the rule is the rule, and the law is the law, and the documentation, I'm challenging, so it's up to the person who's being challenged to prove that I am right in my challenging.
Thank you, Mr. Grooms.
Thank you.
Ms. Blessett, you've tendered us some information. Do you want to walk us through this? Or
Yes.
outline for us what you are arguing regarding remaining on the primary ballot for these two positions?
Yes, because I agree that rules are there for a reason, and I believe that I have followed the rules. I believe it's the GOP who is not following the rules. So this may not be, I know that you all are pretty relaxed here, but I want to point out that this challenge doesn't really meet the basic requirements of administrative due process. I mean, this is an administrative process. I'd like to refer the board to attachment A, 2024 Indiana Candidate Guide. I'll draw attention to the chapter on challenges. I'm paraphrasing, but due to the short period of time, the board may need to rely on informal methods such as telephone calls to give the best possible notice. Please take note that that does not excuse the use of standard service of process outlined in administrative law. The guide also states that you guys are going to operate in accordance with the State Administrative Orders and Procedures Act, Indiana Code 4-21.5. So I've included some definitions there for you, portions of the Indiana Code in attachment A. And my main point is that written notification is required. I had to come to this office this morning to pick up this challenge, which listed the codes that I could have used to defend myself. It was never sent to my address. That's not your job. Your job as clerk is just to file things. It's actually the job of the GOP to mail things out. So I can't properly defend myself without proper notification. And you know, in any legal proceeding, you all are attorneys, if service of process is not completed, the whole thing is thrown out, or it has to be redone. So according to the hierarchy of law, Indiana Code 1-1-2-1, party rules actually hold greater weight than the Indiana Candidate Guide. So then we have to refer to the GOP rules because the GOP rules are linked to the Indiana Code. So per the GOP's own rules, Rule 1-14 says to communicate means to transmit via U.S. mail, hand delivery, mail, etc. to an address of the receiving party. It specifically says telephone calls will not be considered proper communication. Again, that's not the clerk's responsibility, it's the responsibility of the challenger. Rule 1-20, notice is to communicate to each person necessary to be notified of a caucus, proposal, or other action. I would consider this other action. So communication was not proper and notice was not given. Administratively, this should be dismissed. I don't know if that will happen, but that's my first point. My second point of defense, attachment B, I want to set a foundation by reading just a couple short things from the GOP party platform. First, the liberties of every American citizen as guaranteed by the U.S. and Indiana constitutions and the Bill of Rights must be protected from erosion by government at every level. And second, we embrace, encourage, and will work to ensure the opportunity for full participation of all our citizens in government and the Republican Party. Moreover, we commit to being a party for all, celebrating that we are a party of inclusivity, not exclusivity. I've included some other things there on free and fair elections that I won't read. It's my position that the Clark County GOP is not following their own party platform, as demonstrated with this challenge against me. And my third defense point is that it's the Clark County GOP who hasn't followed our party rules, not myself. Please see attachment B again. In addition to the rules on communication and notice, which were not followed, I'm also being challenged based on a party rule that has two parts. Rule 3-3. The purpose of the party rules is not to prevent members of the party from running as a candidate or to pick and choose who the GOP leadership likes and doesn't like. The purpose is simply to make sure those who run as Republicans are truly Republican. That's why there are two distinct avenues in becoming a candidate. One is the two primary rule. I'm not going to go over that. We already know where the Rust case stands. That's not my point. We'll see what the Supreme Court does if it goes that far. I want to focus on the second part, receiving certification from the GOP chair. Rule 3-3 of the GOP party rule states a PC candidate must, Section 2, be a qualified primary Republican, which is the two-party thing, or Section 3, he or she obtains an authorization form signed by the county chairman saying the individual pledges full support to the Republican Party and the candidate of the Republican Party. There is no such verbiage under this rule stating the GOP chair can disregard section 3 of this rule, and he or she can apply this rule as he or she pleases. Certification from the chair was completely unavailable to me. Please see attachment C, the emails I sent. I made multiple attempts to reach Jamie Knoll by phone, 2 different emails that were provided to me. I got absolutely no response to either method. Didn't return my phone calls. I was completely ignored. This wasn't a denial, it was just a non-response, which means I did not have free and equal access as a candidate. Mr. Grooms replaced Knoll as chair right at the filing deadline. I called him the day I found out I was challenged. He was very short with me. He didn't want to know anything about me and stated he would not be certifying me or anyone. This is not Mr. Grooms' job to keep Republicans off our ballots. It is his job to provide certification to Republicans who don't meet criteria in section 2 of Rule 3-3. The Republican Party didn't just throw in the certification process as a suggestion or an afterthought. It was strategically placed in the rules to promote inclusivity, such as the platform says. If either chair would have given me the time of day, I can easily prove I'm a Republican. I worked on the Republican Jackie Grubbs campaign last year in Floyd County. My most recent campaign donation to Mr. McClure can be verified by Mr. McClure. Attachment D will show text messages from Connie Sellers recruiting me to work the polls on election day as a Republican inspector. I moved here in 2021. I worked the polls in 2022 primary as a Republican inspector and was recruited to do so again just last September 2023. So they can't say I'm not a Republican. That would be ridiculous. This May will be my second primary here in Indiana, and I will be pulling a Republican ballot. In regards to the party rules, I would like my challenger to prove that the option of chair certification can or should be denied to Republicans who don't yet meet the 2 primary requirement. Please see attachment E, my final attachment, showing that these challenges have not been free and equal. I was told that only 4 people were challenged, yet there are more than 4 who don't meet the 2 primary rule. I looked them all up. This is completely unacceptable. I've listed the ones that I found. There could be more. I've included supporting documents from this office with names, addresses, and voting records. My final points are we must acknowledge our county is in a unique situation where blatant corruption has taken place and public trust in local government has been destroyed. This clerk's office and this election board has made really wonderful changes towards transparency, making it so much easier for people to get information, encouraging people to participate, helping get documents that I need. So please continue to take those steps to hold everybody accountable to the rules. I reached out to my opponent in Jeff 14. We cordially had a conversation. We scheduled coffee. She canceled on me the day before. She said she would call back to reschedule. I've never heard from her since. She allegedly has connections with the Knoll family. I don't want that person representing me. I don't want connections with Jamie Knoll to be my representative. The voters need to be able to decide for themselves in Jeff 14, my precinct. Article 2, Section 1 of the Indiana Constitution says it very simply, all elections shall be free and equal. That includes primary elections. Any code, rule, ordinance, party rule, social expectation that goes against the Constitution is null and void. So what causes greater harm to a representative form of government, keeping a candidate off the ballot or allowing a candidate onto the ballot and letting the voters decide? Placing my name on the ballot does not cause harm to anybody. If there's any gray area that makes you question whether I have any valid points, you have to take the side of the people. I urge you to allow our very capable voters to decide who they want to represent them. I do believe in rules. I believe they should be followed. I put great effort into following those rules. I do not believe my challenger has. They have misapplied the party rules, which is blatant abuse of authority. And sometimes people will just get away with what they've always been allowed to get away with. So I implore you to send a message that this kind of good old boy club behavior no longer has a place here in Clark County. I'd also like to add that I did not write down, Mr. Grooms has said over and over again, he's getting his information from somebody else and he's basically just signing a form. So other people are telling him what to do and he's signing off on it. That's not his information. He didn't obtain the information. They obviously didn't pick and choose fairly because not everybody that didn't have that rule was challenged. So it's absurd. It's absurd. It cannot possibly be free and equal when you're picking and choosing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blessett. Any questions for Ms. Blessett?
Just a few. When did you find out about the challenge?
On the 16th.
And was that the date it was filed?
The 16th is the deadline. I think it was a Friday,
Okay.
and that's when I called Mr. Grooms.
Okay, so that was the 16th. Due process requires notice and a hearing, so you found out the day of, and you're here, and you've been heard.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the hallmark requirements of due process, just to clarify.
Well, per the law, due process is
Well-
receiving something in the mail.
Yes.
It's receiving, I mean, because on the phone, it doesn't have this information. I didn't have the codes to look up. I didn't have the exact verbiage. That's not due process. You should know that. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but
No, but
You are here.
procedural due process very clearly is notice and hearing.
right. But I also just received this morning, which I didn't even think to do before, but it should have been provided to me. I actually took a half day off work to try to look up some additional stuff because I did not have time to prepare for this.
You'd said you'd moved here in 2021. Where did you move from?
From Louisville.
And had you voted in any primary elections in Louisville?
I don't recall ever voting in a primary in Louisville. Because I thought about that, pulling records from over there, but I didn't become involved in politics until COVID times.
Okay, I was just curious. All right. Do you have any other questions?
I'm trying to go through the information that she gave us here real quick, sorry.
Thank you for looking.
Oops.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I respond to one item which may be of interest on attachment B on this document?
Yes, sir.
Rules of the Indiana Republican Party down in the middle. My sheet is highlighted in yellow. Or he or she obtains an authorization form signed by the county chairman and a candidate for committeeman saying the individual pledges full support to the Republican Party and the candidates of the Republican Party. I'm almost sure that this rule is taken from a situation where the person moves to Clark County from another county and needs permission from the county chairman to honor the request where the vote had occurred in outside county, or the person had never voted before.
That doesn't state that in the law. That's not in the law.
The section that this deals with the situation where a person has not voted prior primaries in Clark County. That's my own statement about, I don't know about the other part of it, but that's where that rule was intended to be applied.
I'll profess, as the Democratic board member, I really don't have any other knowledge besides what you people tell me about the Indiana Republican Party. As I sit here, the statute is in front of us, and that's what I'm asked to apply. Whether or not party rules are generally the party rules are included in the statute, but the extra information that you've highlighted here doesn't read that in the statute, which would seem to me that it goes back to the seeking permission from the county chairman. You had submitted to us emails that were to the prior county chairman, but you say you've not gotten a response.
He never responded to me at all. And that actually happened to me in 2021 as well. I've never been able to reach Jamie Knoll.
Is no response a response in your opinion, or do you believe that you would have had something formal in writing back that said no?
No, I do not believe no response is a response. I feel like that's just a closed avenue that would be available to someone else, but not me.
Caitlyn, may I speak on your behalf for a moment?
Sure.
What's, sorry, sir, what's your name again?
James McClure.
Okay, sir.
I'm the candidate that she has donated to, so I can attest that this woman has in fact donated to me. I'm a Republican in good standing, running for office for Indiana State House. I can attest to the fact that Jamie Knoll was basically impossible to get in contact with during this election season. I, as a candidate running for office, made several attempts myself to contact Chairman Knoll, and due to his issues legally, he was basically invisible to anyone he did not wish to speak with. I made several attempts to acquire information necessary to me as a candidate, specifically the county PC list, so that I would be able to get in contact with the precinct committeemen who are Republicans, who I need their support of to be able to be successful in my pursuit of the nomination for House 71. It was not until Chairman Grooms was installed that I was able to get this list. So I can definitely corroborate the information that she has given you, both that she has made donations to Republican candidates, and that she is, that getting hold of Chairman Knoll, if he didn't want to be gotten hold of, was basically impossible. I also would like to appeal to Chairman Grooms. Ron, you've known me for well over 20 years, right?
Correct.
And you know what I stand for politically, correct?
Correct.
And you consider me a Republican in good standing at this time, correct?
So long as you voted in those two most recent Republican.
Which I have, I'm on the ballot. I'm asking you, as a Republican in good standing and a candidate for Indiana State House, because you are A, the aggrieved party, and B, you are the county chair, and may, at your decision and discretion, allow this woman on the ballot. I ask you personally, from me to you, to drop your challenge and allow this woman to be on the ballot.
Sir, if I did that, then I would have to rescind my pledge to the Republican
No,
Party.
sir. It says you have the
Sir,
option
I
to
have
do
the
this.
floor. I have the floor, I'm speaking.
Go ahead.
I would have to rescind my challenge, or my pledge to the Republican Party to uphold the rules of the Republican Party of the state of Indiana when it comes to determining eligibility of candidates for office as a Republican. I'm not going to do that.
Respectfully, I
I
disagree
am
with your
not going to.
interpretation. You have the authority as county chair to allow someone to run for office as a Republican if you so see fit. You are given this discretion. It is in the party bylaws.
And Mr. McClure, I think
I
Mr.
think
Grooms
you've
has
heard
made
my
his
answer
answer
to that.
clear for you.
Understood, but
I understand.
I want to make my speech because Caitlyn is an important person to me. I've worked strongly with her over the last 2 years, and I can corroborate all of the information that she has presented to you, that she made every good faith attempt to get in contact with Mr. Knoll, and he refused to contact several people I know intentionally because he was gatekeeping. And as she said, our party stands as an open party in its party platform primary planks. And denying her the ability to run because the chairman has corruption issues, basically, is wrong. It's just flat out wrong. And I appeal to all of you to do the right thing and allow this woman to run because she jumped through all the hoops she could possibly jump through, and it's being denied. People go through a lot less effort than this to get on the ballot. She's gone way beyond the pale. And you're gonna say, well, the rules are the rules. She was denied because somebody's gatekeeping her, and it's wrong.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the time.
This is still an election board meeting and not a caucus of the Clark County GOP. I don't want to belabor the point, but the rule in the statute's pretty clear. I've got to have 2 prior Republican primary votes. They don't have to be consecutive. They don't have to be the 2 most recent. There just has to be 2 in which this person could have voted. And 2 most recent that they could have voted.
Right.
Right. So
2 most recent,
if there was-
in which they voted.
in which they voted. So if there was 1 in 16 and 1 in 20, or 1 in 18 and 1 in 22, or 1 in 18 and 1 in 14, I'm satisfied with that. I would consider that person a Republican.
Ms. Blessed said I could speak on her.
Go ahead.
Quickly, you all are here for a reason. You're here for a reason. You're not here just to be redundant and repetitive. You're here to use your brains, your heads, your knowledge to make a decision. If not, then we wouldn't even be here. If it was a cut and dry thing,
Right.
you all wouldn't even have the availability to use your judgment and to make a decision. I get what the rule said, I get the parroting, you know, but you all have the obligation on behalf of a citizen. You know, I know her, I'd try to sway her to go to libertarians, but she won't, you know. I have said it, but, you know, this is a woman that's a Republican in good standing and has a future, a bright future here in Clark County, if allowed to have it. And you all have that position, you know, you're not here to parrot the rules. We all know the rules. She's a new resident, new blood in the county. You know, I'm on the way out, I'm in the queue, I'm old. You know, we need nice, young people to be involved as the GOP platform states. You know, I tried to do it previously and had a little problem with the former chairman. You know, he didn't like the fact that I thought the Republican Party was a big tent, you know, and can allow Tea Party people. You know, she's not a Tea Party, I'm not saying that she is, but I tried. You know, and we were shunned and we were shut down. And now we still got the old goats still running the party.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I'm trying to
thank you.
provide an opportunity for everybody to get their feelings heard and their thoughts heard on this matter. I know that you have your hands raised, ma'am. Please identify yourself and go ahead.
I'm Bonnie Earhart.
Okay.
I want to know, she was able to work the polls.
Right.
Does that not apply to that? Does
Poll
she have
workers
to
are not
be-
candidates on the ballot, though. So that's gonna be,
But they
that's a
represent the
fundamental,
party.
I get it. But she was asked, she served, but in this case, you've got to be a Republican or a Democrat in good standing, you've gotta have one of these exceptions. You've gotta meet this requirement.
So why are we
And-
having you all?
What's the point of the challenge
What's the point?
if you're not gonna even
Sometimes
consider?
challenges are incorrect.
This is
Sometimes people
100%
do have
somebody
information
would
to bring
want
us,
to be on
and
the ballot.
I am appreciative of the fact that Ms. Blessett has supplied us with this information. That's why I asked, when you came from your other jurisdiction, had you voted? Maybe that would have made a difference to Mr. Grooms, but,
No.
and he would withdraw his challenge, but he didn't, so, I mean, I don't really have much else that I can do.
You know, Kelly, you kept referring to the rule, and yes, I'm a Republican. I don't really care about the Republican Party rule on this. I'm looking at the statute, and the statute's mandatory. Right, the statute says you either need
Which she attempted to do multiple times.
but that's not the, I mean, but the chairman doesn't have to give.
Yeah, but
his
she couldn't
consent.
even get anything, Tony, and you know that.
I know, based on everything she said, I don't doubt that, but that's the rule. I mean, that's not the rule, that's the law.
Knowing she didn't have the two primary vote history, she made every attempt to contact the former chairman.
I can't address that. I mean,
She has the proof.
hey, he wouldn't return some of my phone calls either, and they were work related, but that's the way it goes. Like I said, is a non-response a response? And if he doesn't return the calls or answer the emails, at some point, I'm gonna either
Negligence.
note that it happened. I can't say it's negligence. It very well may be an intentional omission for him not to answer, right? But I don't have any other information. And Mr. Grooms is the one that's made the challenge. And what happened with the prior chairman, really, I don't see how we can address any of that.
I don't think Mr. Grooms even understands the rules. I mean, that section 3 is in there for a reason. It doesn't say you can choose to ignore
Well,
someone who
but the
reaches out to
state
you.
law is pretty clear, and that's what we oversee, and that's how we that's what we can apply. I'm not, again, this isn't a meeting of the Clark County, Indiana GOP. This is a meeting for the election board, and if I've got a challenge and it's validly made, you are here, so you do have notice and opportunity to respond. If you wanted to hire an attorney and you wanted to come back, I mean, you're more than welcome to, but I don't see any information coming to us that's going to be able to change one of these prongs on this rule, either two prior primary votes or the permission of the party chairman. And so it ties my hands. I agree with you 100% about new people getting involved. And there's not much else I can do, but there's plenty of other ways to be involved. And I encourage you to continue. I mean, I've enjoyed you guys being present at all of our meetings, so, and I look forward to you guys working the polls this spring and this fall. But when it comes to being a candidate, both the parties, this is a rule that applies to the Democratic Party as well.
So how many Democrats are being challenged tonight?
How many ran for offices that were gonna be challenged, right? I mean, truthfully, I couldn't get a dog to play with me if I hung a stake around my neck.
But there's, Andy can speak, they can speak to that. Their process is a bit different in terms of.
It's pretty much the same. If Mr. Galligan, who's the current party chairman, or any of the members of the Central Committee, or any other person wanted to challenge a candidacy, there's nothing that would stop an opponent from the 14th precinct delegate or precinct committee person from filing the challenge. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the party chairman. My only requirement here for this meeting is I want somebody to come and tell me why they've done this, which Mr. Grooms has done. I'm not going to assume if he hadn't have shown, I would have looked at it and thought twice, but he is here. He speaks from knowledge of her voting record and can make the challenge.
But
So,
did you say there were others
Yeah.
that didn't have this two?
I understand,
Yeah,
but
what-
And they weren't
Again,
challenged?
these
So
rules
that's
aren't
okay?
applied always the same, so a
See, that-
candidate
Why
can
not?
challenge.
That's the part that
Yeah.
I question.
Well,
I get it.
You feel okay with that, Mr. Grooms, just challenging 4 of us and not the rest of us that don't have the record?
Because I'm acting on the information that was given to me.
Okay, so yeah, you made no
Was that
decision for
person that-
yourself.
He didn't look it up himself.
And I have probably as much experience with interpreting rules and regulations and laws as anybody in this room who's not an attorney. So I don't really accept your statement that I don't know anything what I'm talking about.
That's not what she said, sir.
Nobody said.
You said there's
But
other
I think it's,
candidates.
I think it's
that don't
important
meet
that
the
we
rules.
kind of focus on the attention on the board.
Right.
I don't want it to get into an arguing
Again,
match between everyone. I don't want that to happen.
No,
We're all
we don't want-
adults.
we don't
So let-
either.
I know, I'm not implying that you do.
It's just that she mentioned the fact, sir, my name's Dorinda Stackhouse, she mentioned the fact that there are other people who did not meet the requirement, and they're not sitting here tonight.
because apparently they made the second piece of that, which was
You have
the,
that, you would have to have the actual paperwork.
Right.
You were required to have a signed sheet from the county chair acknowledging this. Can the board or the clerk produce?
We're not
all
the
these-
custodian
No,
of
I'm
those
saying,
records,
If that, if
Mr.
it's
McClure.
not, if they
And
didn't
the fact of it
exist,
is,
then that means
no
there is
challenge.
a two-tier justice going
But I'm
on here,
telling you.
where the rule is being applied
I can-
incompletely.
I can act on challenges, right? And that's what we have for these 4 offices, or the 4 candidates, 5 offices. That's it. If you have evidence that other people were challenged, that's not the board's problem.
Mark,
That's gonna be,
Mark,
you've gotta take it up with
I'm
the
a firm believer
GOP or
that the
the
primary should be allowed
Democratic
to go on, basically. That the voters have the final say. It shouldn't be up to a board or the arbitrary deciders. It should be decided by the people, as you yourself have said, Mr. Steele.
We're not arbitrary deciders. I've got the statute in front of me. I'm trying to take all the information I can to make as best a decision as I possibly can. There's nothing arbitrary
I'm
about
talking
that.
about those in the party hierarchy who gatekeep.
Well, I understand
That's
your
the
complaint
point.
about gatekeeping, but I will make it clear. Because you can see how contentious this is, these rules are actually codified in state
Yes,
law.
I understand
The
that.
reason why is so that people understand that when it's done, and that we don't have disputes and we don't have angry arguments.
I'm not trying to have an angry argument. My point is, this directly affected me 2 years ago. Because Jamie Nolan intentionally deceived me into giving me his verbal imprimatur and didn't give me the paperwork. So that means that everyone who's not being challenged, who doesn't meet the requirements, must, by statute as you're stating, have a signed piece of paperwork from the prior county chair.
The statute
saying-
doesn't clearly say that.
Yes, it
The
does.
assent
It
of the
says they
party
must be-
chairman, a declaration of
Which
candidacy
is a piece
must
of paper,
inform
yes,
the
that's an
candidate.
actual form. I
I know that,
okay.
it's your can form that you filed here.
No,
but-
sir, there's an attachment you must have, that there's an actual form for it, where the chairman has to, you say, the chairman affirms that he says you are a member of. It's
I
a
hear you,
separate
Mr.
action
McCoy.
that must occur with all of.
But there hasn't been a complaint filed regarding that. And if there are people that you all believe are not Republicans in good standing that are on the Republican primary ballot, then that is an issue to take up with the Republican Party.
I assure you I'll be checking, because
I encourage it.
if the rules are gonna be applied unfairly or arbitrarily, then for all intents and purposes, those rules don't really apply at all, because the law is not applied to all men equally, as you lawyers know, is not the law.
I don't disagree with that at all. Are there any other comments that anybody wants input added before I'll close that? Is there, having heard everything from all of the parties involved, is there a motion to be made on the floor?
Move the challenge carries on both the, on both counts, the precinct committee, Jeff 14, as well as the convention delegate at large.
Is there a second?
You all don't have to all agree with each other. There are 3 of you.
Hearing no second, Mr. Steele?
Motion fails.
Mr. Lynch, no second.
No.
Hearing no second, the motion's not gonna pass at this time.
Thank you.
I'll simply table that. We're gonna have to meet again to reconsider any other information.
You don't think have to meet again, motion fails.
It's tabled.
I'm trying to leave the record open. So let me try to leave the record open. If there's any other information to be brought to us, I would welcome Ms. Blessett bringing that to us before our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay? So that motion does not carry. There's no second at this time. So we'll move on to the fifth challenge, 4th candidate.
Fourth challenge.
Well, we have Ms. Blessett and we have Mr. Dunn.
There are 2 left.
Okay. Which one goes next? Reynolds? Croucher? Okay. Next is a challenge filed by Mr. Grooms here at the office regarding the candidacy of Mr. John Croucher for delegate at large at the Republican Party convention. The challenge is similar, has not voted in the prior 2 primary elections in Indiana where he was able to vote. So is not a Republican in good standing for purposes of a complaint. Mr. Grooms, is there anything else that you need to add to that for us?
Not at this time.
Mr. Croucher, are you present? Go ahead, sir, if you would like to respond to the complaint.
I think in the previous primary election, my ballot was pulled because I was accused of voter fraud. That was in part of legality in regards to that. The case was dismissed and my record was expunged, so I did vote in the primary election. Yeah, but my
Who pulled your ballot? What information gives you that?
Pardon?
You said your ballot was pulled.
Yes.
By
It's in
who?
the prosecutor's office and they charged me with 3 counts of felony.
Okay, so you were charged with felony charges of voter fraud,
Yes.
but your ballots here were counted.
And that says that you just told me I didn't vote in the past 2 primaries.
22, 22, 20, 19, 18, 16, 16, 15, 14, 12. So,
Didn't meet that requirement.
Well, you voted, sir, in the Democrat primary in 2022.
I don't remember doing that. Yeah, I don't know that.
well, go ahead.
So,
I don't see any evidence that
there's
you've been
no evidence,
convicted of a
okay.
felony or
Yes,
anything
Mr.
like
Grooms
that.
is right. Throw my ass out.
Don't-
Are
This is being-
No, sir.
I mean, come on, you're gatekeeping, which.
No, are you
so
saying
what-
that you
what's the-
voted Republican other than the one Democrat primary?
The most recent, yes. You voted in the Democratic
All right,
primary in
and then-
2022.
All right.
Was
so
that
that's-
Treba or somebody, maybe, I don't know.
That's what?
Treba Hodge?
No, I wasn't in the city. I was a county resident.
Oh,
And then the second reason is what?
Your 2019 municipal primary election, you voted Republican in the primary. In 2018 primary election, you voted Republican in the primary. But the 2022 primary election, you voted Democratic in the primary.
2 out of 3.
Well,
2 out of 3?
3 out of 4.
What was the
Three out of
name you were
four?
charged, John?
You met it.
But you said there was two reasons. One was, or was the only reason for it?
That you
That was the only reason?
did not vote in the previous 2 most recent primaries, and that you were otherwise not a Republican in good standing.
It doesn't have to be recent though, right?
No, it is
Just
the
the
most
most-
recent.
just the
It's
two most recent.
I just have to make sure, because I keep thinking about the other.
That you have voted in, it has to be the 2 most recent primaries, the 2 most recent you voted in.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to make a comment back to what Caitlyn said. We were not properly notified in regards to this. I received a voice message from Haley,
Mm-hmm.
and I was under the understanding that she said 2 weeks from today, but she says it was Tuesday when she left the message. That's the only notification I got. I did not know any of this information. I didn't know I had the ability to come and retrieve it, to build it, rebuttal or whatever.
You are here.
Pardon me?
You are here.
Yes, I am, because it wasn't for a couple people telling me this.
Prior to today, had you had any discussions with the Republican Party about being a candidate for either a delegate position or precinct committee person? No. Have you had any other communications with anybody in the Clark County GOP?
Yes, he has, myself.
Mr. McClure?
Yes.
Okay.
Make a motion that the challenge carries based on 38274A and B. I'm sorry, 3-8-2-7A for A and B.
What is that in lingo?
That's the code citation that we've been dealing with.
Yeah, no, but-
That's they didn't vote.
2
in
most
the
recent primary
That's what I'm
elections.
sure.
Yeah, or
In
the,
which the candidate voted were primary elections held by the party with which the candidate claims affiliation. And if the candidate cast a nonpartisan ballot, which we don't have those in the primary, a statement from the party chairman, which we don't have one of those in the record either. So it would be 2 most recent primary elections. And based on the record in the system, Mr. Croucher, you cast a ballot for the Democratic Party in the 2022 primary election. Do you recall that?
I recall that.
Is there a second?
I will dispute what you guys said. You got the record.
I can consider what's in front of me, and the information. I have to rely on basically the Indiana Department of State keeping this stuff up to date.
My only comment was, as Caitlyn said, that I felt like the failure to notify us properly was not done. And I'd like to ask you guys to do a better job at that in the future, please.
I'll second this one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Last is Kenneth Michael Reynolds challenge filed by Mr. Grooms on behalf of the Clark County Republican Party. Candidate is not a voter who cast a Republican ballot at the two most recent primary elections in Indiana in which the voter voted, and who is not a Republican in good standing with that definition. This is for Republican Precinct Committeeman for Jeffersonville Precinct 7. Mr. Grooms, do you have anything that you need to add beyond your complaint here regarding Mr. Reynolds?
Do you have anything I want to add to that? Yeah.
Okay. Is Mr. Reynolds present with us? Yes. Mr. Reynolds, you've had an opportunity to see the complaint from Mr. Grooms.
No, I just heard about the meeting.
Is there anything you want to tell the board?
Well, I didn't realize that you had to have 2 Republican primaries or whatever. That doesn't mean just because I voted Democrat once, because I have friends that are Democrats and Republicans. I voted for Mr. Grooms ever since I could. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Sir, were you aware, actually you voted, let's, just so the record's clear, 2022 you voted in the Republican primary. In 2020 you voted in the Democratic primary. In 2019 you voted in the Democratic primary. And in 2018 you voted in the Republican primary.
Ever since I was in school, I voted Democratic paper because I did not think that it mattered who I voted for come the big election.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Outlining the statute as it is, having to vote in the 2 most recent primary elections, you would be eligible to do this after this year if you vote in the Republican primary in 2024.
Correct.
Is there a motion?
I move that the challenge carry, again in part, are based on 3-8-2-7 A4, that the candidate has not voted in the the 2 most recent Republican primaries in which he had the opportunity to vote Republican. No, I'm saying that wrong. He has not voted in the 2 most recent Republican primaries in his last 2 primary voting attempts.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Mr. Reynolds, next year, you will, after this cycle, you'll be qualified to run for one of those positions, or any position for that matter on the Republican ballot. So I encourage you to please stay involved.
I will.
Since we did not carry the motion, it's because we have a deadline by the end of this period to make sure that we certify these. I'm going to ask that we set a meeting for 11:50 Wednesday morning. Carry our notice forward so that we'll take this motion back up again 11:45, let's say, to consider any other information that Ms. Blessett may bring to us, or Mr. Grooms. And then at that time, I'll remake the motion.
Thursday, 11:50.
Yeah. No, Wednesday.
Wednesday, that's what I mean.
Everything has,
Yeah, it has to be in on Thursday.
well, let's do it Thursday. Well, I can only do it by telephone on Thursday. I'll be in, let's do it at 4:45 on Wednesday, or 4:30 here, on Wednesday afternoon. That'll be, 4:30 Wednesday, and we'll reconsider the motion on Ms. Blessett based on Mr. Grooms' complaint. Mr. Grooms, you'll be with us on Wednesday at 4:30. Can you?
I'll have to check my calendar.
So you're just,
You can send a proxy, by the way. As long as we know who they are in advance and that you've told us.
provided you with my answer, a proxy or in person.
Contact us here during business hours, Angela or Haley or Jim. will
Email
glad
would be
to take
best, 'cause
Information.
They haven't.
Email also will work. You can notify the clerk.
I'll notify the clerk. Either I'll be here or I'll send the proxy. And you're talking about Thursday morning?
No, Wednesday afternoon at
Wednesday
4:30.
afternoon, okay, Wednesday afternoon at 4:30. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, the rule about the two primaries, you know, it was kind of not all that important as far as I'm concerned, but is there any rule about people who are felons that have been pled guilty to a felony, being able to run?
Indiana restores your voting rights after you have completed your sentence. If you are being held pretrial detention, you are still entitled to vote. But to my knowledge, a convicted felon serving a prison sentence is not entitled to vote. But as soon as the sentence is completed, that's restored, which is typical for most states.
And if you can vote, you can run. Basically.
Well, I just remember when there was someone who pled guilty to a felony, and we had a meeting, you weren't on it at the time, and it was a 2-to-1 vote, and they allowed that person to continue to be on the ballot, which I thought was horrendous. Much more important than not having 2 primaries on their record, you know, and yet we made an exception and allowed that, so. Sometimes I have trouble with rules. Rules like that.
Is it possible to get copies of this information regarding this?
I will make a motion now that all notes and information collected during this are made part of the public record, and I basically give everything to Ms. Cohagen to be recorded. Any notes that I take, they're available for coming in, making photocopies.
Mr. Crawford, you have my copy.
So, yes, and we keep that here in a folder for the public to review. And since, we can't deliberate off the record anyway, so everything you see in here is basically what we've done. So is there a second on that motion to incorporate all of our notes and paperwork in the record?
Including exhibits given by the.
Absolutely, yeah,
Do you
all
want
of
my
it's in.
actual script? I don't know, or do you just want the attachments?
No, your attachments, so it's sufficient.
We have the
and,
recording.
There's a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we'll incorporate all this paperwork. Yes, Mr. Grooms?
I have a question.
Sure, sir.
When, can you tell me the reason that Ms. Blessett's decision was extended or
Well,
delayed?
the motion didn't carry. The motion was to
Right.
support the complaint and deny our
Was
candidacy.
there a reason mentioned in the discussion as to why?
I didn't hear a second, and so it's still open. We can take that motion vote up again, and
I
that's
just
what
want to
I
make sure I
plan to
didn't
do.
miss something.
No.
That there's a statement about why they were voting.
No, and to be fair to her and to you,
Yes.
my record will remain open because we have to deliberate publicly anyway until 4:30 on Wednesday. So if there's information you
Okay.
want to tender to us, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you very much.
Same goes Ms. Blessett. And then we'll just take the motion back up again. All right, is there, since,
So you said 4:45 Wednesday for the.
4:30, yes, 4:30. And we've already published our public meeting record, so our next regular meeting in March is gonna be on the third Monday at 4:30 here at the courthouse. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but we'll basically adjourn this meeting or recess this meeting until Wednesday afternoon at 4:30. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to publicly thank